Let me pull up Facebook. Put this over here. Are we good?
We are live, everyone. And we welcome you all back to another Tuesday CLCI Live. And today we're going to be speaking about disattachment from outcomes and trusting the process. And I think we're going to also be kind of delving a little bit into black and white thinking, and also we'll be integrating some coaching tools that can assist with these concepts. We're excited. I'm excited because I have two amazing coaches joining us today, and we will be proceeding with, again, ways to assist in these spaces.
I should tell you, I can't share anything or do it because I haven't signed into Facebook on this computer. So
okay, no
I am
worries.
useless with regard to comments and things like that at the moment.
I'll do my best to keep up with all that.
Okay.
As much as I can. And by the way, I'm Jerome, everybody. Forgot to mention that. We've been doing so many of these consistently. I feel like you guys all know me, but if you are new and this is your first time joining us, we do these every Tuesday at 4. And again, we do all types of different things. Sometimes it's students. Today we're doing in-house, just talking about coaching concepts. And again, excited to go ahead and proceed with this. And I will pass the gavel over on to Lisa so she can go ahead and introduce herself to you guys.
Hi there, welcome. Thank you for being here. And I want to make sure everybody knows 4 o'clock Pacific time.
Yeah.
That's going to change no matter where you're living across the country. But we've got some exciting discussion. Some of it is a peep into our level 1 material. Some of it's a peep into level 2 material that we're going to be sharing with you. So make sure you ask your questions, comment, just let us know you're watching. Thank you for being here. My name is Lisa. I think I forgot to say that too, Jerome.
Lisa is a coach. She's a relationship coach, and she's awesome. The owner of CLCI. She doesn't like to say it. I'm just gonna out her. She owns CLCI, and she's also like our fairy godmother as well. So Lisa's amazing, and Jerome is my right-hand man. He's awesome. And I'm Brooke, everybody. Hello. I am the Chief Operating Officer and also a coach as well, coach, consultant, and strategist. Mostly, though, I am a humble observer. We today will be talking about not being attached to outcomes, like Jerome said. And I think that that's a little topical. We don't want to delve into the other current events going on at the moment. But we thought this might be of value to you guys a little bit, those of you out there. So do we want to begin with what black and gray thinking, kind of black and white thinking is, and that polarity? Do we want to start with a quiz?
I think we absolutely should. That sounds fun. I'm excited.
Well, let's talk about first what we mean when we're talking about non-attachment, attachment, and then we can segue into that. So when we're talking about attachment, we're talking especially about the coach's attachment or not attached. We're not supposed to be attached to the outcome, but it's helping our clients through their attachments to help them find what they want their expansion to be. So, and in that attachment, there can be healthy attachments, right? We're attached to our kids, our family, many of us our work. There's unhealthy attachments that don't promote our well-being. Or there's old ways of thinking that we want to grow past that don't serve us today. So
also, go ahead. One of the big things that when we hear from students a lot when we're in class is they feel attached to outcomes with regard to their sessions and having a breakthrough with their client, or having an attachment to what their client is doing and where that's going to take them, or which direction they'll go, right or left. And the importance of not having that attachment when coaching, right?
Absolutely. Not being attached to where the client goes towards. I've heard some people when they're learning, they go, oh, that's not where I wanted them to go. That's kind of that first mistake, right? It's not about the questions you ask, but if you're trying to drive the boat because you're attached to where you want them to go because you want them to be successful, all of those, notice those words, that's what you want. Our focus is going to be how we as a coach don't become attached to what direction they go, but also helping, as I mentioned, those clients with those, we're going to bring in black, white, gray thinking and share with you some of those concepts. Go ahead.
I mean, as a coach, we want to stay, I mean, pretty firmly in the gray, right? In that gray area. It is our instinct as human beings, though, to venture into the polarity, the black and white. There's a couple ways that you can identify your or catch on, like Lisa was mentioning, like if you're getting attached to, whether. Let's give an example. So if I'm a client and I am I'm trying to decide, or my goal is for the session is to figure out, I don't know, if I want to get another cat. Those are our examples. Maybe Lisa is attached to me getting a cat. she wants me to get one.
So happy. I see how happy you are with a cat. Yeah, now, so I'm trying to sell her what we call on this level 2 way of conversing. I'm trying to sell her on another cat because I can see how happy the 2 cats she has now make her.
Exactly. So and then what'll happen is you start to guide. The same way if I'm a coach and I'm marketing, let's say, well, I would say I wouldn't do that as a marketing, as a life coach. You're coaching somebody that's been through the same situation as you, the same situation as you. And you have your life experience having gone through that situation. So they might choose the choice that you didn't choose, and you might be inclined to go, don't do that, or or the other way. But as a coach, we can't do that, right?
So I think this kind of segues from what we were speaking a little bit from last week with some of the fears and right. So that,
well, yeah, but I think, last week we were talking about how it was our fears. In this case, it's projecting that onto our client or
wanting to get it right.
Yeah, yes.
Make sure we do our job, working really hard. And go ahead.
So if we want, what we can do is there's a couple ways to catch if you're in this space of black and white thinking. And it can be as simple as asking yourself a few questions. So I'm going to ask a few questions, and you guys respond yes or no. Now, I think it's also important to note, though, that this can be based in any situation. Like, people are different and they behave differently in every situation they're in. So it might be of value to think in a specific situation, maybe something that is causing you stress or causing you concern, or and think about that specifically, and then ask yourself this, although some of them are kind of general. Do you tend to see things as all good or all bad? You guys, yes, no? No.
Yes, I'm just kidding.
That we answer so much because we are so well trained.
I know. Okay, so, but are there situations where you do see things as all good or all bad?
Yeah, well, that would be true. There are some circumstances where it has someone's life and safety and the ownership of their being. Yeah, I would definitely see that as a black and white, no gray whatsoever in that kind of position. Mm-hmm.
And that's so basically what you're saying is if somebody's life is in your hands or something along those lines, if you choose to behave recklessly or something, that would be always bad for you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is, we can get into hot debates with this. There are things where it's like, is killing always bad? Is it always good? Is it, those things that can get very divisive. I'm a firm believer in that there is no such thing as good or bad. Like, it's a matter of perspective. And I've gotten into some serious arguments about that before. Because again, if you say yes or no, though, that's a sign of black or white thinking, right? Good and bad,
right?
Black or white.
And I'm attached to that concept where I feel like there's times that yes or no, that's appropriate. We're not going to stick there in coaching because we are in that process of helping things expand and process that way.
Now, I have a question. So with regard to if I have personal morals and boundaries and things like that, right? And my client is conducting themselves as somebody that I am not in alignment with regard to that. How do you handle that situation as a coach?
Yeah, for me, I would, and I've never actually had to do this, thank goodness, but for me, I have already practiced that. Having something that is a natural thing for me to say, it's beyond my scope of practice, and I would upsell probably a therapist direction. I work with Mark. He's an amazing therapist. He has done a lot of work in this area, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to upsell.
I thought you were giving your client's name Mark, and I was like, oh, poor Mark.
That's somebody who I used to refer to until I moved to Colorado.
You still could, right?
Well, yeah. In these days, because everything is on Zoom, right? Or something.
So here's another one for you. Do you find yourself singularly focused? Are you somebody who focuses on one thing wholly or completely and will actually let other things sort of fall by the wayside because you're so fixated on a single thing or a single project, a single person, a single, you name it? Do you guys ever suffer from that?
Not normally, but there are instances where something will take presidency over other things that are happening around me. But normally, I'm always considering. I kind of scale these things. Sometimes something becomes more important than something that was less important a couple days ago. So, but sometimes there are instances where I do hyper focus on one particular task just to get it done and over with, and then I'm completed.
When we get into relationships, like when we first start, I think most people in that honeymoon phase, that first we can be a little singularly focused, I would think. I think I've known just about everybody to fall victim to that at some time or another. Lisa?
So definitely when I'm upset, what the technical term, when I'm in an arousal state, I will have a tendency to be stuck on a loop concept, for sure. Focusing, I think, is different than necessarily what we're talking about. So I think it's good to be focused, and we all can be really focused really well. It's when it's not in our best interest. All of these concepts is when it's not in our best interest.
That's we're talking about the polarity.
Yeah.
We're taking it to maybe some extremes and things like that, but that's just to really demonstrate the polarity of it. Right. Because I think focus is a good thing. As somebody who has ADHD, I can hyper focus, and that can be a bad thing because I will forget to eat. I will forget to, and it will be 8 hours, and I stand up, and it's like my whole body is stiff. So, and that's something you have to catch. So, while it can be very productive, it's not healthy. So, it's always about those extremes and really maintaining a degree of middle ground, right? Yeah. Here's another one. Let's see. Do you argue with others about what is right versus wrong?
Absolutely not.
Do you ever argue?
Well, yeah. Maybe for me, I try and stay away from arguing.
There's really no reason to argue if you're not
exactly.
arguing a point, right?
to kind of, relate to that. To me, again, there is no exact right or wrong answer to anything, because you would have to consider a lot of variables that you probably most likely necessarily don't have access to or may never will. So I can get upset about something because it personally offends me, but I don't ever try and project my personal opinion to the point where I will be considered arguing my point as yes or no. Very rarely is there an occasion where I couldn't say never, because there are instances where, yes, something outright to me is wrong. More often than not, I'll walk away from that situation. But if I can't, or if it involves someone that I feel like should hear my perspective, and I believe that it'll actually benefit them, then again, very rarely I'll go ahead and express my opinion. But if I can see it lead to some type of argumentation, then that's no. I try and consider all sides of the coin, and no one really knows exactly what yes and no is, what right and wrong is.
Factually speaking, what's funny is I've gotten in this state of mind where I've gone, well, there are facts, but what are there? Like, I can get, because I've started to explore this world, and I mean, where you can question everything. There's a theory that is that if I'm in this room and I'm not seeing, and nothing is being seen or experienced in the other room, by virtue of that, nobody experiencing it, it could not exist. Like, so
it's that proverbial tree falling in the forest.
Exactly. So are there really, I mean, Pluto was a planet, and then it wasn't, and then it is, right? So you can't have these arguments. I mean, you never know, because at any minute it could change, kind of. And history is something that is told from a very subjective point of view in many ways as well, right?
And that's why research becomes a huge important piece, and knowing what you're speaking about. And that piece can still be tailored to each person's experience, and why we as a coach aren't trying to be, if you will, the influencer trying to get our clients to go a certain direction.
Mm-hmm. And I've just checked out of trying. I mean, if I will just let people be wrong, I'm just like, or be right, or be whatever. I'm just
exactly.
I'm just not going to argue. Carry on. You're
exactly.
Don't have energy for that. One more question. One more. Maybe two. I think these are both very good, so that's why. Do you think people should meet a certain standard in their lives or living, or do you have expectations of others?
Do you want to go for that one, Lisa?
So I'm thinking of a conversation I've had in the history of me where I say I'm trying not to be attached to the outcome with blah, 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 blah. And then I'll have somebody try and convince me how I should be attached to that outcome. But clearly, yes, there's going to be circumstances that I want standards to be met.
It was hard too, because I mean, like, okay, so in a job, we got to be very clear. We were very clear about expectations and standards. Where it starts to get kind of gray is when you're getting those personal relationships, right? And you want to be this like open and whole person, but then the other side of the coin is, well, I have to have boundaries and standards and set. I've learned some things in my life, and I know what I don't want to deal with. So at that point, you have to kind of be a little rigid or black and white, right?
So it's not about never participating with black and white. It's about learning our flexibility and helping the client find whatever it is and where they want to be.
Where they want to be. I think when we were working on level 2, Lisa and I, one of the things, we have a section that's black and white thinking and black and gray. And the way that you explained it, or we came to it, was that as a coach, we take our clients, they start in black and white thinking, right? We bring them into gray so they can see all the options. And then we have them make a decision, which is then in turn bringing you back to a degree of black and white thinking. So you're starting them here, opening them up, and then refining the focus so that then they can proceed after having seen the whole picture, right?
And then it becomes an experiment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's experimenting with the new direction, see how that works and flows for you. And in that experiment, if something's not quite right, it's just an experiment. We get to adjust and make, again, then it opens up that conversation. Mm-hmm.
And this will bring me into our the last question, which dovetails beautifully into our next sort of way to talk about this, is, do you use absolute terms like always, never, forever, anything of that regard, failure, success? I mean, really, at the end of the day, those are absolutes, right? Do you guys use those?
I do.
Usually when I'm mad.
Yes, I was going to say usually in an emotional state.
Yeah, a arousal state that will encourage those kinds of terms.
Yeah, you always this, you all, and I've in those moments like caught myself and like,
I know, you just like
can't always, you
"Hey,
can't
you say it over
always,
there."
you can't always, you can't everyone, you can't like those things don't, that's not true. Stop it. It's like relearning how to speak a lot of times in many ways, because there's so many of those black and white terms out there. Jerome, do you use black and white terms?
Yeah, I mentioned usually when I'm in a highly emotional state, and then yes, I'll catch myself and pretty much have a conversation with myself that whatever you just said is completely false. And usually, being in an emotional state, it kind of I lose validity in whatever I'm saying because of the fact that, again, there is no exact answer to that.
There's a tool that we are going to share with you guys to help with this black and white, like when you're using these polarity terms. Let's try to think of a few more terms that are that put us in that polar state, that black and white state, if you guys can think of any. Otherwise,
always and never is a good one.
Always and never, that's, I mean, very common. Yeah. Everyone and no one is, right? Because that's, I mean, those are black and white, aren't they? Forever. Yeah. Forever and never. That's another, right? I'm just thinking of them here. I'm also pulling up some, maybe, I hope. Bad and good. I mean, that's, what's an in between? That's a fun game. So what's the middle? We'll do this. This is the tool we're going to share with you guys. It's kind of a scaling tool. Elisa, do you want to explain what scaling is? Like what the 1 to 10 scale kind of?
Yeah, so a lot of it can be used, this tool can be used in all kinds of different arenas. Words can be in place of numbers. It is definitely flexible and really helpful. So when we use a scale from 1 to 10, 1 to 10 is best, or 1 to 10 to worst. You kind of set that parameter. Oh. And in that 1 to 10, let's say 1 to 10 is best. The client is saying, well, in this place, I'm feeling about a 4 and I'm stuck and I can't really think of anything else. I might say, so if we just took it from 4 to 4.1 or 4.5, what would that look like if you could just take it that half a step? And oftentimes that will open up the conversation. Whereas in the same concept of that scaling, we can do always and never. Where do you fall into that? What's the opposite?
Well, that's what I wanted. So here's the thought. We'll play a little game too while we do this. Always and never. What's the middle ground of always and never?
Sometimes.
So we put that right in the middle. So always, never, sometimes, and then you can sort of scale in there. The way that I saw this really quick, I'm going to whiteboard it. You guys want to whiteboard for a second?
Yes. Yeah. While you're pulling that up, Sue says she never uses absolute terms. Ever.
Never, ever. Nicely done, Sue. Nicely done. Another word, another phrase that isn't, I mean, it may not be black and white. It is a little ambiguous, but it's because it's ambiguous that it's dangerous. Better is a word that I don't necessarily, isn't always better, right? Can you guys see the whiteboard?
Yes.
Okay, so what's funny is I don't have my normal tools on this. I only have my pen. Where are my whiteboard tools? That's okay. So if we have always, hopefully I can write nicely. No, I can't. Hold on. I think if I do cursive, I might be able to. Oh my goodness, this is not easy to write. Where's the typing? And never. And in the
always.
middle of a write sometimes. Okay, you would basically put tick marks here, and then you can put like, here, here, and here, and then I can go, okay, it's not always, it's not never, okay, it's more like here-ish. That's about where I'm at. It's like one of those the scaling things that you use when you're taking quizzes and things like that. why doesn't the black, we need to fix that. There's the shape's right there, nothing.
So imagine how you can use that. You find out from the client, where is it that they want to go? What is it supporting that place where they're at? What if that changed? How would they like it to change? So that's when you open up those beginning questions that start opening up, so that when the client starts finding their answers, they can find their pivot in that moment to the new direction, the new experiment.
So quickly, I want to, one thing we haven't really covered is, why is it dangerous potentially to be in black and white thinking? Or why don't we want to always be in black and white? What is the consequences of not seeing the gray, the middle ground? To start, I mean, if there's any time that we have huge polarity with, like, you know, stereotyping, right? Stereotyping is a form of black and white thinking. And what does that do? Is it makes your world smaller. It makes you not experience things that you may otherwise have experienced, that could be fantastic. You know, you could be meeting these amazing people, but because you live by a stereotype and don't give that person a chance, you're missing out on a huge opportunity.
So it stops things. It prevents things that could have influenced you in a way that you had found your growth.
Yeah.
Also, people who can't forgive a lot of times are stuck in a black and white thinking space, right? Because a big part of forgiveness is being able to see all sides.
I think one of the biggest things you lose is the ability to learn, which, again, as you mentioned, Brooke, is debilitating you and cutting off a part of your life.
And forgiveness also tends to be more hurtful. If I'm not forgiving, it's going to be more hurtful to me because I'm stuck in that unforgiving emotion. Excuse me. Whereas we typically think we're in that unforgiving place, that we're hurting and we're trying to hurt the other person. And that's not growth. Being forgiving has the ability to have growth. Now, forgiving, some people get confused. That doesn't mean that you have to accept something that's not good for you. No. But what we don't want is for you to feel, and that, again, for me, what I don't want is to be stuck in feeling that anxiety and that sadness and that angst. What were you going to say, Brooke?
Oh, I was just going to say, well, and when we don't forgive, it's really only damaging ourselves in our world and we're not moving forward from that situation. So, one with regard to, well, I'm more on why, any other reasons why black and gray thinking is not all, or black and white thinking is not always good.
I mean, I think the obvious, as we've been speaking about, it keeps you stuck and it doesn't allow another person's perspective to be valid.
In business, it can also keep you from maybe going towards opportunities that you could be presenting themselves, or possibilities. Maybe you think that, you know, oh, that's not possible. I can't do that, right? I can't. Let's say COVID. If I was a business that was like, no, we could never go virtual. We could never, if we did that, we wouldn't have a business right now. So it was by virtue of us being open to possibility that we were able to switch to virtual. And had we been in an in-person mindset and been refused to move out of that, we probably wouldn't be where we are right now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's tough. A lot of business owners will get stuck doing the same thing, right? And it can make it a little, getting your client, let's say your client is somebody who wants to get into motion. This is the kind of questioning where you might be able to open them up to more possibility, right? With regard to that. So any other, I want to flip the coin because I don't want us to be black and white here and talk about times in black and white can be good.
Yeah.
Well, I think one that really sticks out is when you're setting boundaries, when you know this is a line that absolutely should never be crossed.
Mm-hmm.
that is when you can use black and white, I think, effectively, and it's a healthy way to use it.
Rigid boundaries, yeah. Example of a rigid boundary. Nobody can hit me.
Yeah.
But unless I get in a boxing ring and I've chosen to be hit. At that point, okay, let's do it. But I mean, outside the world, that's a strong no, right? That is an absolute. And that's okay.
That would be harm to self, harm to self or others, that concept. We're not talking about when we choose to play in a different arena. But harm to self or others is a definite boundary violation. We got 2020 going on, and we still have this concept going on. Anyway, so when a person decides that they want to make that change, right? What's next?
Mm-hmm. Are you asking?
Yeah.
So next? When they want to make that change from I'm setting a boundary to, well, I mean, it depends on the situation, and it depends on what it is that and it's up to them, right?
That's the answer. It's up to them. It's not up to me what I think is right and what I think is appropriate and what I think. If it goes beyond my moral, like you were mentioning earlier, then that's something I have to own. But for the most part, when I'm working with clients myself checks at the door when I cross that, because I was the in-person coach. When I cross the threshold to my office, I'm out there, and all of this is neutral territory.
So that dovetails into the last thing we wanted to talk about, which is really, it brings us back to not being attached to outcomes. It brings us back to trusting the client, right? And trusting the process. This is something that we say all the time here, is trust the process. Yeah. Everything happens for a reason. Well, it's okay. Be in the moment. Trust the process. Don't be attached to the outcome, because you could miss something amazing by being attached to the outcome. But go ahead.
Another positive way to even look at that is the word we tend to use these days is mindfulness. It's to be mindful of who you are, what you're doing, and how you want to be presented in the world. When you're in a conundrum, that's when the coach helps you find out what that answer is. Break through glass ceilings, find your words, practice communication skills, interact with patients better. I mean, on down that list.
I want to so mindfulness, and this is it's probably a me thing, and this is probably just me being selfish. But I want to define mindfulness, because I think that there's so many nuances that can get lost in the definition, because it can mean a lot. When I first presented with the word mindfulness, I really hadn't used it or thought of it, but it was presented to me as being in the moment, like being present, and actually being present, not being in your head, not being, thinking about all these, but being capable of checking everything else and just being in the moment. And that was how mindfulness was first presented to me. Would you guys agree?
Yeah. For me, that's what it is being centered, being another word, even keel, where life is not affecting me. I have that resilience. I'm in the strength of who I am, and totally just being present for the moment.
How do we when our minds are racing and we're with our client, or we've got 15 things going on, how are there any tools or techniques or anything that you guys have done to go, okay, I got to be mindful right now, I'm taking off the everything else hat, putting on the coach hat, and I just got to be present? Do you guys have any tools that you use?
So back 2011 was when I started this process of working with couples, and I was pretty nervous about it. So for me, being in my head is a kind of a natural state where I overthink things. And so what I would do is I would just jot things down. I am a note taker. I'll just jot words here and there on a paper, but on my paper, there was always a margin, and I would just jot things down in that margin so I can let it go, because I have the belief that when I jot things down, I can release it till later when I need to work on it.
That's actually, again, ADHD. So Cool. So all through school, I had my head down and I was drawing and taking notes, like unless I was, actively, because otherwise I was distracted by everything else around me. So it was, if I was drawing and taking notes, I could sit in the class and I'd be okay. Otherwise it was almost impossible. And then the same extended to, I used to have insomnia, and I'd have, like, right before bed, the brain would just go, or I'd wake up, I'd fall asleep and wake up and the brain would go. And the single greatest tool I ever discovered was just making a list, like listing out everything that was going on in my head. And then by virtue of knowing that it was on the paper, I could stop worrying about it in my head. And it worked wonderfly.
Yeah.
That just is a miracle. There's also a technique I use when I meditate. It's called a basket. Because there's a lot of distraction that can happen, like, lawnmowers. And when you're first starting out meditating, it can be very easy to like start to pay attention to all those things, or worry what you're worrying about. And meditating period helps me with focus. My days are better when I meditate. But if in that meditation state, I have a basket and I will put the worries into it's a basket or a shelf. I will put them on there and I will know that they're there. And by virtue of just putting them in there and visualizing that happening, it would stop the worrying about it or the thinking about it when I meditate too, quite a bit. So
for me, and I think this is a little unique in comparison to what you guys just shared, I try to enhance my senses. So I try to feel rather than think. So if I feel like I'm too much into my head, I'll step outside. Hopefully there's some sunshine out there that I can allow to hit myself, or if it's cold, even then, that allows me to feel and again, tap into a state of mindfulness and be, rather than overthinking, and sometimes allowing yourself to be stuck. That kind of shifts things for me enough to get out of that place of stuckness, and allows me to
a sensory moment.
Yes.
Yes, I totally get that. I mean, those are like really good moments too. There's like, yeah. Okay, a breath of fresh air, like, oh.
Interaction, a change of scenery, all of that that's why sometimes when we have a stuck moment, waiting till tomorrow sometimes is even a benefit, because it'll give us a different perspective.
Because you do so much processing in your sleep. Your brain does so much processing in its sleep. It's almost imperative that you sleep on it. Yeah. My question is, something I want to talk about also is we have a lot of students in class that are I don't even think they realize they're doing it, but they're having trouble being mindful because they're worrying about having the right question. And this is right and wrong. We've been talking about black and white, having the right question, being mindful. So this kind of all works together. There is no such thing as the perfect right question. Mind you might ask a question that feels perfect or right, but that doesn't mean that another one may not have been the same. It's not about the question, right? Does that make sense? Or I figured Lisa.
Yeah. We are asking questions. We are trying to help the client get to a better perspective, whatever that perspective is that they want and need to be going through. The questions are important because you have been mindful and paying attention and interacting with the client. When you trust yourself in the process, kind of goes back to what we said a few minutes ago, those questions will bubble up and be what the client.
And it's trusting
probably,
the client.
Pardon?
It's trusting that the client is going to give you those questions. Like
they are.
Yeah, you don't need to come in with them locked and loaded and ready to go. It's that by listening and being mindful and being present with the client, the client will present you with the right questions. Like that, they will show you what the right questions are, the right questions.
Just like when you're with your friends and you're interacting with your friends, although we tend to tell advice more when we're with our friends. That's the piece we're keeping back.
Or not pay attention to them, either way. Yeah.
I'm deep. No,
enough about me, more about me.
So the idea is to become from that same comfort that you are with your friends in with the client and paying attention and that listening to what they're saying. And we've got the tool, as you, some of you have come to our level 1 class, the tool that works amazing. And you just blend it with your question. And sometimes not having the question, tell me what the perfect question is here, can be an amazing eye opener for the client, because they'll tell you what that question. I used it with my grandchild the other day. I go, what's the perfect question to ask here? And she told me, like, she's 4 years old.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that goes back to the client they have all the questions, they have all the answers, they have everything. The client comes equipped with everything. Like, they're not lacking anything when they walk through the door. If they are lacking anything, it's a space that they can process through what they already know and have.
Yeah, they don't have the space to unfold typically in their own world. I was meeting with someone yesterday, and she was speaking about how we women tend to always overbook ourselves. You know, we overextend ourselves. We continue. Well, men too. But I was talking with a woman, so please know that you can say men. And that we have a tendency as a human to overbook ourselves, to overthink, to overfunction, to over. And this is a place when we're working with that client that we can just go take that breath, find that space as a client, and unfold the directions we need to be moving towards, or potentially find what that is that we've been holding on. Every time you hear a client, oh, I didn't even know I was thinking that, when you give them that space. Yeah.
And it's, I mean, really, I think that's, one thing that something I was writing in class not too long ago. And it was, I started out with trust the client, and I started with trust the process, and then I went trust yourself. But ultimately, it all comes back to, at the end of the day, trust the client. And I mean, trust the client and trust the process, because both work and it's tried and true. And if you're a coach and you have those two trusts, then it will all sort of fall together. So you don't need a list of questions or now I do want to say one of my favorite tools that is it's the mirroring, and somebody, what I'm hearing you say and then saying that back to somebody, and that's not even a question, it's just in my, is this what am I hearing this correctly? Very powerful. And then silence, the power, sometimes not having the question and just letting it be quiet for an extra minute. There have been so many times where I was like, I got to fill the void or something in this, but then there's an extra pause. I feel uncomfortable, but then they start talking again, and it's, oh, okay, ooh, look at that. Most of the time, the client will fill the silence if there is silence, right?
They've got something going on. Usually, you can tell by their body language that they're not just sitting there. You can tell. Yeah.
Well, and I sometimes just being quiet is, I mean, you don't have to ask a question. Like it's because they'll ask it of themselves and they'll start to process. So they're sharing the stop and the pause, and then they start to do it again. And it's, I mean, it's a very cool, silence is a very powerful thing. Jerome, I feel like you haven't said anything in a minute.
Leaving it up to the coaches to discuss.
You're a coach? Oh, don't even. You are a coach.
Practicing coaches, I should say. I can attest to the facts that what you guys are speaking about, just sitting in the silence as being an answer, is something that I think really is, I mean, again, speaking about being stressed on having the right or wrong answer, just being able to not say something and being okay with that it's an extremely powerful space for the client.
And we just experimented with it just this second.
Yes,
You were
exactly.
quiet, and
exactly.
you filled in the space.
It's admitting class. It's something that I see over the course of, usually during our level 1 classes. It's a space for a lot of coaches who are learning to be coaches, uncomfortable, very uncomfortable, and they feel it's their job. They have to do this because it's what they pay me to do, right? You know, I'm supposed to speak back to them. But again, just as it just occurred just now, there's so much power in letting the person you're speaking to, your client, formulate their thoughts in that space of quietness and allow them to go ahead and reciprocate.
I just interrupted. I just ran right over him. I'm
You're
terrible.
totally fine.
I'm fired. So what's funny is I just did a podcast recently, and what was weird is they edited out the pauses. And I think it was you're trying to get like the max amount of content in the podcast, but listening back to it, I felt a little uncomfortable because I was like, there should be pauses. And I'm already somebody who talks so fast. So it's those pauses, those moments of like, and quiet can be very, very, not only powerful, but important. It's a breathing moment. It's like, it's a moment for us to process and sort of, like you said, Jerome, process and just sort of formulate the thoughts and the words and a lot of times we don't get that opportunity because there's something ringing or screaming or who knows, and so we don't get that pause. So maybe that's just what your client needs is the chance to be able to pause. I think the big key takeaway though is trust that the client has everything you need as a coach, right? If you've been trained, you've got the tools, you know what they are, you're good.
We're not talking about needing to send out a life preserver. We're not talking about needing to learn, things that help navigate the world, being able to write, well, we don't write checks anymore, but it's, being able to do those kinds of things. We're talking about in a place where a person's ready to grow and shift, no matter where they are. All of these skills apply really beautifully.
I also think it's important to mention though, that we say that the skills that you have as a coach, this is for coaches who have gone through training. They exist in you, you know them, you understand them, you have them. So you don't need to take a list or worry about them being right or wrong. But that foundational skill set is important. Knowing what being a coach is important. And
practicing.
We provide a lot of questions. Like we're saying the questions are, you don't have the questions in front of you. That's not because those open-ended questions, those questions aren't important. It's that you have learned them. You have trained yourself in them. You know them inside of you now. By taking class, they become like a muscle, like, something you can access and use. And so trust that, just like I trust that my pinky or my finger is here and will always work, until I chop it off or something. It's a similar thing though. Trust that your coach finger is there. You can pull the trigger whenever you want, because you've developed it. It makes sense, right? I mean, that was an interesting analogy, but I mean, because I've used my fingers enough times that I know it's there and I know how to bend it. I don't have to think about it.
But that's the kind of thing you have to practice. In order to practice, just like when you learn back in the day, if you learned how to ride a bike, you practice to ride that bike. You practice to now you don't even think about it. One of the things I did to build the skill of asking deeper questions, I had this one book that for some reason drew that out of me, the different questions. And so I just started keeping a journal of powerful questions. I had a little cheat sheet back in the early days because I would get nervous. I would jot down the beginning of an opening question. We say opening question, but not all opening questions. It's not all about having an open-ended question. There's small amounts that need to be closed-ended questions, but it's having that confidence that you are there, that you're open. I like that word vulnerable, not Achilles heel, but open, vulnerable, ready for the flow of a session. That means you're going to be present or mindful in the process of what your client is saying and wanting to grow towards. Mm-hmm.
We're getting towards the end of our live here. Before we do get to the end, and I've got a little PSA at the end too for us as well. You guys want to play a quick game? Do you want to play a game with me? Will you play
Always
a game
for a game.
So I'm going to put a minute on the clock here.
A minute. Oh gosh.
So it's okay. So this is, we were just talking about, we can do black and white. We kind of done that, right? So how many, in 1 minute, I'll give you guys 1.5 minutes. 1.5, because it's a longer thing. And then if anybody out there is watching, you guys, you can put them in the comment box and we'll read them out. So how many, in 1.5 minutes, how many open-ended questions can you think of?
Oh, you want us to say it out loud?
Yeah, say it out loud. Start now. Tell me more.
How was your day is a great one.
Share with me.
What went wrong?
Oh, well, is that open-ended?
Well, I'm assuming if somebody told
How
me
does it
it
make
was
you
bad.
feel?
Yes, there you go.
How do you want the outcome to be?
Mm. Mhm, mhm,
Which direction are you planning on heading?
nice. Yeah.
It's still a yes or no kind of answer, but
Yeah.
that does give you a direction so you know how to follow up with it.
Is there a way to make that?
Yeah.
Open?
Yeah.
How do you feel about this?
Well, how do you feel about this is open.
Yeah.
That's open. Yeah, that's open. It is. Absolutely.
Which direction are we going?
Which direction are we going?
Mhm.
What would you like to accomplish today?
Mhm. What did you get from today's session?
There we go.
What next? We have Sue. She said, "What next?"
What next?
Is there anything else you would like to work on?
Is there a world in which you could see that happening? That's a yes or no, though. So, but there is a way. There is.
Imagine
If. There it is. There's our 1.5 minutes right there. So there we go. Those are some powerful questions for you guys. The difference being, if I say to Jerome, "Are you having a good day?" I've just already assumed Jerome's having a good day, right? Haven't I? This is one of the things that's a stickler. People go, "Good morning," and I go, "Well, maybe for you."
Yeah.
And that's just because I'm saucy, but you would say, if I wanted to ask that open, I would say, "How is your morning?" Because otherwise, if I say good morning, I'm being kind of assumptive, right?
Yeah, that's why I was a little skeptical about what direction are we going in next? Because what if they don't want to go in a direction? What if they just want to stay?
Oh, well, that's true. Absolutely.
a lot of the times the client will tell you that, though. When you have a rapport built with that client and periodically you get a question wrong, it's not that big a deal. Honestly, it's not, because what they will do is they'll be in the flow of the conversation and they go, "No, that's not quite it." Right? So then they'll correct it in the moment with you when you have that going on. If you were to come in and say, I really want a good day, right? You would say, "Imagine a good day. Share with me what a good day is like."
Share with me. Okay. No, so unfortunately we have just a few minutes left, and I have a little PSA, a little interesting thing that's going on. Lisa, myself, and Dan Alexa will all be speaking at Coach Talks. Yeah, so we're going to be at Coach Talks, which is a virtual event. So along with Jack Canfield and the author of, I can't say it out loud.
Can we give a first letter and then?
Yeah. How to un-F yourself. Yeah, I think I'm saying that wrong. He will be there on Sunday. So Dan will be talking on Friday, and Lisa and I will be speaking on Sunday. And we also will be giving away some tickets at some point in all of this.
So not this weekend, but the following weekend.
The following weekend. So next Tuesday, we will be giving away some tickets to Coach Talks. So make sure you tune in next Tuesday. So that date would be what? What would next Tuesday's date be?
Next Tuesday is the 10th.
The 10th. So make sure you guys tune in next Tuesday, the 10th of November. We're going to give away some tickets to Coach Talks for you guys, so that you guys can attend and get to see Jack Canfield talk, there's going to be a lot of very beneficial coach tools being given out throughout the weekend. The weekend is the 13th, 14th, and 15th of November. And Lisa and I will be speaking on the 15th. Dan and Alexa will be speaking on the 13th. I'll actually be emceeing at least some parts of it, which is kind of cool. So I just wanted to give a quick plug to Coach Talks and us being there and being their sponsor. So as for CLCI Live, thank you guys for watching. Do you guys want to say final thoughts, Lisa? Final thoughts, Jerome?
Thank you for being here. We always appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. You're our family, and we hope you get through this holiday season as happy as possible. There, I told you what to do.
I just kind of want to go ahead and co-sign what Brooke said. Jack Canfield, awesome. I got to get a quick snippet of him speaking last week, and he's great motivational speaker, and we want you guys here Tuesday so you can go ahead.
There's a takeaway. I got a takeaway from his talk. Like there was something that like resonated with me that is still resonating. And
do you want to share really quickly?
That was the few, like 5 pages a day, and you'll have,
yeah.
I mean, basically 1,700 pages at the end of the year. That's amazing. Like, why wouldn't you do that? And it seems so tangible. I've shortened it to 3. I'm like, I'll do 3. 3 seems plausible. But that was just so simple in that regard. Really quick though, there's one thing we did not talk about that I wanted to, if we can, in one sentence, if possible. How do you deal when you are attached to an outcome and it does not happen? How do you manage? What is a tool? What is something we can do to deal with that? And that'll be our sign out.
Breathing. Nice. I take a walk. All right. Go ahead, Joe.
I love that. And I kind of want to just say, what are your guys' answers?
Yeah.
Down here,
Yeah.
Go ahead and just drop into the comment box. What you guys?
I'll give mine. Mine is realizing that anything that I assume is going to be going to happen as a result of me not getting my way is an assumption. It's all it's a total. I have no clue. So it's just me being awfully, presumptuous and conceited at the end of the day and being like, well, I know it's going to go this way because I didn't, and that's not true. I don't know anything. So
for me, I just consider the fact that isn't the end of the world. There's other options that are available to me that I can embark on. So I just remind myself, world's not over. Day's not even done sometimes. So continue.
And tomorrow's a different day.
Exactly.
And we can't let one thing define us, right? So words to live by as we sign off. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you share, make sure you comment, make sure you check out Certified Life Coach Institute, and also check out Coach Talks too, because we'll be talking of it. And that's it. That's all we got. Thank you guys so much. And have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye.